Welcome back, Guardians, to another TDT video. I'm your humble host, Misum777. Today we were supposed to have our Australian Persuasion Luxio, but he got caught up with a few things here. So unfortunately, you have me for today. I am joined with the ever so funky fresh, Funky Thumbs.
What's going on, everybody?
And today we're going to talk about some of the stuff that we've seen in the latest Twab, as well as some stuff that's been bubbling up in the community. If you're new to what this is, Dear Bungie, we essentially address Bungie specifically, talk about some of the things that they've done within the community as a whole, give them some encouragement, or admonish them if they do something wrong. Just, generally get a conversation going as if we were talking with them. If you enjoy this kind of stuff, of course, be sure to leave a subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Let's get rolling. First and foremost, the very first thing I want to call out is that the community is in a very positive position right now. The Twab, I think, Funky, I think you put it as the Twab that changed the world. When Joe Blackburn essentially pulled a 180 on a lot of things that the community was upset about. This Twab alone gave us that Twab alone gave us a little bit of fuel to the fire to want us to keep playing, right? I'm sure you're kind of in the same boat, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's one of those, like, you feel like you're at a statistical disadvantage if you don't run Stasis.
Right. And that's just like one thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of things that got addressed in it. So the community as a whole is in a really positive mindset. So we're going to analyze to see if this Twab was able to maintain that. Another thing I want to talk about that's kind of outside of the Twab. By the way, this is not going to be a read through of the Twab. That's Aztecross's job. If you want to check it out for yourself, I'll leave the link in the description, but we're not going to go point by point. So if you're here for that, I apologize. That's not what we're here for. But anyway, second point I want to talk about is Keitel in the Twitter right now is absolutely fantastic. I love when game devs get involved like this, or just any company gets involved like this. It reminds me, makes me really reminiscent of the Wendy's Twitter, right? Or like they're very involved with the community, and it creates very much like an image for themselves that way, right?
Like they're the cool company.
Yeah, it's again, this obviously doesn't cover the Twab specifically, but it is something to call out. It is really cool to see Bungie taking some of this stuff. On top of that, something I actually don't have in my notes here is, if you haven't seen it, check your email. Bungie put out a survey asking for player feedback on things like cheating, just generically asking, what do you like as a player? What do you feel cheating has affected you? How much has it affected you? Have you talked to anybody that's affected them? Right? And while personally here on console, cheating is not nearly as bad, things like network manipulation, just generally bad connections, DDoSing does still happen, right? So it's really nice to see Bungie continuing to put out more of this, like, gather feedback, right? And we haven't even busted into the Twab yet, so let's actually crack this thing open. First and foremost, the very first thing that they mentioned off the top is the 12-man raids, and they've talked about a couple different things, which is really interesting to me because it makes me think that maybe, just maybe, they're embracing the idea of doing a 12-man activity. I really hope that obviously they're not going to, this was something that kind of bubbled up out of nowhere, right? So they're not going to have the infrastructure for it right now, but I would really like to see a 12-man activity.
I think it would be great. Like the old school Halo ground war style things. Like I think that'd be great. You give me a PvP mode with a Drake tank and I am set.
I'd love to see, like a huge ass map with vehicles, just like it used to be, like in the old Combined Arms was the mode, but like 12 people, like a lot of freaking Guardians on a huge map, like a patrol map or something like that.
Like don't give me mayhem. I don't want mayhem. I want that mayhem.
Yeah, like almost like Battlefield, like like the franchise Battlefield. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
But with Space Marines.
Yes. Wizards. Bingo, exactly, with space magic. All right. Anyway, the Grandmaster has returned. The Grandmaster Strikes has returned, which is great because I think people are starting to get burnt out on Battlegrounds. So it's just fortuitous timing. Just something to throw out there. It's just one of those things where I think a lot of, like, I don't engage in PvE too much, but I definitely have talked to a few players who've been like, hey, I'm kind of burnt out on Battlegrounds. So it's good to see the Grandmaster come back, and obviously you can get adept weapons and such with it too. Awesome.
All of the mods.
Yeah, I'll get all the mods, right? Another thing, next thing that this talked about is the bug fixes that came through. In particular, I'm actually really saddened about this. The Omni Oculus was apparently bugged. It was not supposed to work with things like the Rat King, which I don't think that they should change. I think that armor pieces should have some of these baked in synergies, like we were seeing with the necrotic grips and the thorn. I would love for the Omnioculus to kind of continue that lineage, and it's really sad to me that they don't want to do that. And I'm not entirely certain as to why. I don't think it was overpowered. I think it was a very specific build, and it was strong, but it wasn't ridiculous. So I'm a little sad about that.
Just fun synergy.
Yeah, exactly. Just finding synergies like that. I would love if the game had synergies like this, like all over the place, right? But I don't know. It's Bungie's game, so I guess they're going to do what they want to do. But I personally disagree with that one. Anyway, Arbalest got a nerf while they were talking about some of this stuff. Arbalest got a nerf. It was very lightly mentioned. Arbalest is a huge problem here on console. You might be on PC, you might not think it's that big of a deal. But here on console, Arbalest is an absolutely huge deal. So it's great to see Bungie finally getting around to addressing it. It has taken way too long. Bungie seems to be continuing the let's just wait for way longer than is necessary to actually get a patch out on weapons that are very clearly a problem weapon for people who are like complaining about this sort of thing, and not unjustly, right? Because obviously there's times when people are like, this weapon's OP or this weapon's too weak, and you know, a common sense approach to it's no, that's you're just not skilled with it, right? Speaking of that, I see a lot of people defend Bastion. It is a very strong weapon, and it, in my opinion, does deserve a nerf as well. I know that's going to probably piss a handful of people off, but it's just go log into Trials, which we will talk about. Trials has returned, and you will see that when it gets to the sweaty stuff, Bastion comes out. What does that tell you, right? It tells you that Bastion is a very strong weapon and maybe a little bit of a crutch. So I'd love to see them address Bastion as well, and I like to see them get to these patches a little bit faster.
Fingers crossed, anyway.
Yeah, exactly, right? We got a lot of stuff to talk about, only 15 minutes to talk about it. So, March 23rd, the Stasis nerfs are coming. If you're having difficulty with Stasis right now, like a lot of us are in PvP, just hold on. It's coming. I might as well... What was that?
Bear with us.
Yeah, exactly, right? I might as well talk about this now. I was planning on talking about this a little bit later, but I'm surprised they aren't releasing Trials when Stasis is nerfed. It's interesting how they worded the Trials return. They said that there was an issue, but they didn't really say what. Obviously, the reason why it got canceled in the first place was win trading. They said that there was an issue and it essentially got fixed. It was very vague about it, which makes me think that maybe there's some, behind the scenes stuff that they're checking to see if people are doing win trading, like if they're seeing people win games consistently without scoring kills, then maybe they just like ban the account or something like that. I don't know, but I'm curious as to what they quote unquote fixed, and I'm also curious as to why they didn't wait for Stasis to get nerfed before they release it, because I think that would have been a nice crescendo to the return of it, because I know a lot of players that still aren't going to go into Trials just because of how rampant Stasis is. So a mild criticism, I suppose. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Funky.
How long was Trials away? Like 2 years? 2 weeks.
Oh, you're talking like previously. Yeah, like 2 years. Yeah, 2-3 years, yeah.
So, like, everyone knows that there's flaws with the systems. Like, I would have said put it off until, like, they bring it back and made, like, more fundamental changes.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Even if it takes longer than it would have taken for the Stasis stuff. Fix the Stasis, that's coming out on the 23rd. If it takes another 2 months to make it,
really enjoyable,
more rewarding for your time and enjoyable, then I think people would be happy with that.
I agree. I think that would have been a better play, because I mean, what it sounds like right now, obviously they're trying to do things with the anti-cheat and such, and they've been slowly trying to get on top of the issues like getting out of bounds and this win trading, all this other stuff. But what it feels like what they did is they said, oh hey, our chicken's raw, let's just stick it in the fridge and then serve it again, right? They just took it away for 2 weeks and stuck it right back out there. It doesn't feel like anything has changed, but I guess we'll have to see. I don't know. A lot of Stasis nerfs, we're not going to go over every single one of them. The big things to call out is that, in particular, the main offenders within Crucible, things like Shatter Dive and Withering Blade, have been nerfed primarily for PvP. A lot of the stuff isn't going to be affecting PvE, which is fan-freaking-tastic. So, yeah, it's great to see when we're able to kind of separate the sandboxes a little bit, because it wasn't really an issue. Like stasis wasn't really an issue in PvE. It was an issue in PvP because like just go look at how many players are running stasis, right? So it's good to see them intentionally separating how they're balancing this stuff out. Some big things to call out. I'm not going to go into the specifics here. First of all, Shatter Dive got a usability nerf, which is good to see. It can't do it as often, and the damage reduction's gone. Withering Blade, for the hunters in particular, is my biggest point of issue because it's just so damn strong. The overall stacks of stasis have been reduced, and one of the things that's interesting as well is they now essentially have it where you can do essentially half measures of freeze, which I think gives them more control over how much freeze gets applied, which is good. So now you can essentially think of it like it can go up to 20 now, if that makes sense. Effectively is what it does.
Well, technically they split it from a base 10 to a base 100 now.
Essentially, yeah. So you can get a lot more specific.
Yeah, which is good.
Yep, agreed. But yeah, Withering Blade got a nerf in terms of the amount of freeze that it actually gives to the amount of damage it does, which is all great. Target acquisition and such, all fantastic stuff to see. Next up, Glacial Quake, the actual Behemoth super, got turned down in terms of its effectiveness within PvP. It was an absolutely dominant super. It was one of, if not the best super in all of PvP. So it's good to see that that's definitely finally getting something addressed. It was interesting because I would have said when it first came out that it was one of the weaker supers just because the hit registration was so funky. And then they fixed that and then it became insane. And it's one of the fastest supers, one of the longest lasting supers, the highest damage resistance. So a lot of the stuff here, the AoE, reduced damage resistance, the amount of super energy cast per use, all this stuff, bringing it down, all fantastic stuff. Shiver Strike also got a little bit of a nerf. Nothing too crazy, just made it so that it can't go as far. Warlocks primarily got buffs, which is interesting to see because I still am willing to hold to the fact that when all is said and done, when the dust settles, Warlock melee will be the thing that everybody will be terrified of. But they seem to be aware of that because they also turned down the amount of damage that the Warlock melee is capable of doing. So we'll have to see. But currently right now, Warlock melee on the Penumbral Blast on Stasis Warlock is one of the stronger abilities in the game. And I don't think people realize that, so we'll have to see if time tells. The super got buffed, which is great, just general tracking, just usability. It was very hard to use. Ice Flare bolts are a little bit more consistent. It always felt a little inconsistent. And interestingly, Chaos Reach got a nerf. So if there was any question before as to whether or not Bungie nerfs things based on usage rates, absolutely we are seeing that evidenced here. Because Chaos Reach was completely under the radar and then only came up because of the prevalence of stasis, right, as a counter to stasis. Yep. And now they're like, oh, let's turn that down a bit, which is very interesting. Very, very interesting. But anyway, let's keep rolling through here. A couple other things we want to talk about. I wonder what's next for stasis. I'm wondering if we were messing with Icefall Mantles and Whispers of Chains, and it gives you effectively damage resistance as if you were in super. So I'm wondering if things like that will start to become the meta, like more supply orientated stasis. So I guess time will tell. Another thing just quickly to touch on here, the Dino armor set won by a landslide, which I'm super happy to see. I'm a Warlock main and I didn't want to look like a Triceratops, but the Raptor and the T-Rex for Hunters and Titans was so damn cool. So it's good to see that. I might actually invest in some armor because it was that cool looking. I know I kind of dominated the conversation here, Funky. Do you have any other thoughts you want to throw in here? Anything I mentioned that you have of your own?
My biggest thing with the stasis changes is that it feels like they're bringing it into a realm of you have to be more careful and more calculated in order to be as effective.
Yeah, which is exactly the way it needs to be, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I really think that the philosophy of everything that they said, even with the Arbalest change and stuff like that, that's kind of the mentality it feels like they're going for.
Precision,
and I'm on board. Yeah, it makes me feel like they're not going to make big sweeping, over nerf stuff, and then 6 months after that finally bring it up to where it needs to be. I feel like we're in a good path here.
Yeah, time will tell. Time will tell. But I guess that'll do it for us here. Again, sorry if the This seems a little bit rushed in last minute because it is a little bit rushed in last minute. We just had some things fall through at the last second there, so apologies for that. Hopefully you enjoyed the content regardless. Funky, do you know the outro line?
Bless your faces. Deuces.
Perfect.